about immigration, criminal law, bankruptcy, and so much more. Guys, that's right, we are with Miss Pert Hora. And you know, I'm sure so many of you guys are wondering what is going on under the new administration. You know, Biden is definitely pro-immigrants, and we're so excited to be talking with Pert today about the new administration. You know, Pert, it's always exciting to see you, and I know with Biden now as the new president of the United States of America, he's definitely pro-immigrant.
Yes.
People are, you know, feeling positive when we think about immigrants. How do you feel about the new administration?
Hopeful and relieved. I would definitely say that is the sentiment of the immigrant community. They just seem to be relieved. They feel like they can sleep at night and not wake up to news that is going to change their lives moment by moment.
You know, one thing that a lot of people have been asking me about is this new visa that's called U visa. What is that, Pert?
So the U visa has actually been here for a while. I do not remember when it was passed. And it is basically a visa, you know, for victims of crimes. It's always been around, at least since I've been practicing, a little bit longer than that. But under the Biden administration, some more positive changes were done to this category, and I think your audience should know about that.
So, you know, you said victims of crime.
Yes.
So is this domestic violence? What type of crime are we talking about?
So there is, you know, if your audience Googles U visa and qualifying crimes. So there's a whole big list. I'll go over the ones that are the most common crimes that I come across, but the list is more expansive than that. So basically, the qualifying crime that impacts a lot of the immigrants that I work with is assault, robbery, rape, arson, domestic violence. You know, so we have unfortunately a lot of immigrants who live or work in crime-prone areas or crime-prone times. For example, I have a lot of, you know, immigrants who work at night hours and night shifts because that's all they might be able to get. And a lot of crimes happen at night. Or they may be living in neighborhoods where, you know, they may not have the best security. So they end up being assaulted or robbed or threatened, you know, so things like that. And then the crime happens and then they get scared. They don't know what to do next. And so those are the typical crimes. But the list is far more expansive than that. So if you want, like maybe we'll put a link of all the qualifying crimes, but you can easily, you know, Google that list also.
Is there a link on your website at all for that?
I will put one up.
Okay.
I will put that up,
Okay.
yes.
So let me ask you a question. So we're talking about victims who see a crime or maybe involved in a crime. What if somebody's here on a tourist visa or they overstayed their visa? If you overstayed your visa and you're here illegally, you don't have a status, can you apply for something like this?
Absolutely. It's the ideal candidate, basically. So anybody who is here without status means no green card and no U.S. citizenship. That involves everybody else, right? And you happen to be a victim of a crime. And a victim of a crime doesn't mean that you are a direct victim. You could be a direct victim, but you could also be a witness to a crime. So that's pretty, you know, that's a pretty nice wide definition. So let's say you are walking down a street and you happen to get mugged. Or you are walking down a street and you see someone else getting mugged. Either way, you are considered a victim of a crime, right? And if you are someone who is here on a tourist visa or you happen to overstay a visa, you can definitely, you know, apply for this visa.
So Pert, a lot of people who are looking at this who may have overstayed their visa, they're kind of thinking, well, okay, maybe I got robbed the other day, but why would I call this in? I mean, I'm not legal.
Yes.
Won't I get in trouble? Won't I get arrested? Won't I get shipped back to my country?
You know, you're thinking exactly like an immigrant, which is what happens to any of us. And I think this fear was heightened in the last administration. We became fearful of cops. We thought the cops are out to get us, right? And we wanted to stay under the radar. But think about it, most crimes happen in areas where there are a lot of immigrants. And they see things. And cops and FBI agents, they need allies from the community. They want people coming up and saying, hey, this happened. I'll tell you what happened. So I should have done my research on which administration passed the U visa, but basically this whole area of law was to create this ally relationship between the authorities, the police, and the non-status immigrants. So they would not fear the police. They would come forward, bring the information to the police, and guess what? In turn, the police, the DA's office, the authorities would help the immigrants stick around and get a visa and perhaps a green card. Because remember, when a crime happens, it's not like it happens today and the answers are there tomorrow, right? Well, what do you think is the average length of a crime till till someone is brought to justice?
It can be months or years.
Months or years, right?
Yeah.
So you want that person sticking around, right? You don't want that person deported. You want that person living in that area, because if you need to bring them in to identify the criminal, or you want them to go to court, or you want more information. And if this person is scared of you, if this person is afraid to go to the police station,
sure,
you're not going to get answers. And that person has answers. So basically, it's a great relationship between the police and the non-status immigrant, but think about it, it's good for America, because you are helping Americans who may also have been victims of crime, and this person is bringing that information forward for all of us.
So now here's the question, Pert. Do you recommend they come and they tell you about this first, or should this person go to the police first?
Look, if anyone's ever had a consultation with me and they're without status, I always inform every single person that, look, there's something called a U visa. Not necessarily because they have been victims, but I don't know when they might be a victim. And if they ever become a victim, I want them to know in the back of their head that, hey, this is something that, could help me and I could help someone. So my advice to your audience would be, heaven forbid, if you are a victim of a crime or a witness of a crime, do not hesitate to call the police. Remember, you want the report right away. You don't want 4 days later, months later, years later. You want to call the cops. You want to let them know what happened. And by the way, this I found out, a lot of the victims are good people. They help the police, but they're so scared of the police, they don't give their names, or they'll give a fake name. And then when they come to me and I'm trying to generate the report,
there's nothing there.
Or they've given a different name. So give the cops your name. Let them know who you are, because of course I can go to the cop, I can explain this, and then I can explain on the immigration application why your name is not what it is. But it would be amazing if we could have your name as is. And remember, the police authorities, the DA's offices, police departments throughout the country are supposed to be trained on U visas. So when someone comes to them, they are supposed to know about this. In my practice, I've come across a lot of police officers, especially when they're outside of New York or Mississippi or upstate New York, where they may not be seeing that many immigrants, where they might not know. And there was one situation where I had a client who was a victim of a serious crime, and the cops did not know. And I eventually ended up speaking to the superintendent of that department, who was a fantastic human, who told me, Miss Hora, if you can tell me why you think this person should get the U visa and explain to me the intent behind the visa, and you would write a brief, I will honor your request. And that person did end up getting the U visa. So even if I come across somebody who doesn't know, I can tell them, respectfully so, that, this person's been a victim of crime, they've helped you, now we would like your help to help this victim out. And there is a lot of legal, statutes and stuff where the police can refer to.
So Pert, let me ask you this question.
I know I talk a lot with my hands.
Oh, so do I. I grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I grew up in Canarsie. Then I moved to Long Island. Then I moved to Queens. So I've got all of these things going on.
It's my teacher days. I
That's
just
your
feel
teacher
like
day?
I need to speak with my hands.
I'm
sorry if I'm distracting the audience about that.
Not at all. Not at all. But let me ask you, people who don't have a status, right? And now they go to the police. They want to, file this report. But let's say they don't have any type of identification. Should they be worried?
Should they be worried, asking me?
Should they be worried?
Or should they be worried? So what happens, I mean, look, and I can give you a couple of typical scenarios, you know. Someone's working at a gas station and someone comes and pulls up a gun or it says, you know, give me your cash. Or let's say someone's walking down the street and then someone comes from the back, you know, and they may or may not have an ID. But every one of us has a right to call the cops. And you can say, this is my name. This is what happened to me. And the cops will generate a police report. If you're living in New York City, there's something called an NYC ID, but ID or not, no one is prevented from making a report. We do have instances where, look, the fear is legit. And I feel it. I can understand. I've had people, you know, one of the crimes that really breaks my heart is when in our community, when we've had clients who are victims of lawyer crimes, where people have gone to lawyers thinking they're going to get a green card, and their identities are stolen and fake forms are filed. And you have no idea how many of those clients have ended up in my office, and I'd be like, did you call the police? And you know what I've told? They're like, well, the police called me. I actually got a request from the FBI to help out. And I said, did you? No, out of fear they did not. But had they done that, they would have qualified for U visa. So there are some instances where people may not know English. They're afraid to go to the cops. They're afraid if they enter the precinct, what is going to happen to them. So in those instances, they'll be like, ma'am, would you mind coming with us? So there are a few instances in my law office, we might accompany them or talk them through it or tell them how to do something like that. But overall, I would encourage your audience, like if you have been a victim, please go and report the crime in detail with your real name and get the police report. If you're working in an office or in a gas station where there may be video recordings of the crime, let the police know.
Yeah.
Ask your boss maybe if you could have that. I've had situations in Louisiana where this person had so many. Poor guy was really in an immigration mess, but he truly helped a lot of situations where his gas station kept repeatedly being held up. And there was he was featured on one of their Channel 5 news and something like that, but he was so afraid to come forward because of his other immigration troubles. But you know, we were able to gather those clips from those channels and piece it all together. So the point is, talk about the crime, get a report going on, then go see an immigration lawyer, and then see where we can go from there.
Pert, I'm going to ask you, how many U visa cases have you dealt with, and what was your success rate?
I don't know the number, but I would say I at least have about 10 to 15 a year. And so far, it's been 100%.
Woo-hoo.
It has been. But it's not because, well, the work is done. Number two, whenever I am, assessing a case for any area of the law, I do like to take the cases that I think will result in an answer. I'm not going to talk about this. Sometimes it's also strategy. Sometimes I want to give my clients options. They may be an asylum applicant. They may be being sponsored by a husband or wife, and they're victims of crime. And I say, hey, if you have 3 roads, take them all if you can, if you can afford it. Because if one of these doors shuts, you have this one open. Sometimes the U visa might not lead to something, but the judge who's on your asylum case or the USCIS officer will be like, hey, this is a good person who's helping out this country. Or if the asylum, in your court proceedings, the judge wants to deport you or wants to, whatever it may be, and they may say you have a pending U visa case, they may extend your time to be in this country. So immigration law, as with any other area of law, it's a strategic thing. It's to give yourself as many options as you can. And the beauty of U visa is that it does not contradict any other option you have. It runs parallel to it. So you can have this and everything else. So, and the U visa as is, I think it's a powerful tool. Like I said, in my particular office, the ones that I've dealt with is with DV victims, which is, we're going to do an entire episode of that. People who work at gas stations, cell phone stores. A lot of crime happens at cell phone stores. A lot of people just walking down the street. A lot of situations where, by the way, when I talk about DV victims, I want to make this clear. It could be male or female. You could be sexually harassed as a male or female.
Sure.
We've had people stalked, male and female. They're all qualifying crimes. The list is larger than that. But those are the very typical ones that my clients happen to be from in that area.
Viewers, we're getting so much information here, especially with the U visas. Now, I'm going to play a little devil advocate here with you, Pert. People who are listening to this are like, oh, wow, if I see a crime, I can apply for this U visa. Have you ever heard of someone making up a crime?
Not my clients, but I've heard people who did that and then got into trouble. Remember that one thing you do not, the big F to avoid in immigration is fraud. I tell people, like, even if you've done things bad in your past, even if it's an immigration fraud, or whatever you're scared of, my approach always is stick to the truth. Own up to it.
Yeah.
It's easier. You can tell I'm a human, I made that mistake. One, we could try to rectify that mistake or let the officer know. But once if the move is from their side and they accuse you of fraud, it's like a dead end for you. That means that in the future, if a reform comes, in the future you have any options, the fraud will prevent you. Of course, there's something called waivers for the fraud, but you don't want to go down those roads because those roads become very complicated and extremely expensive, right? So yeah, don't fabricate crimes. And just think about this. You're in a country that you want to be a citizen of, and this country wants to be good to you. And this whole area was created to help immigrants with non-status. So if people start doing things like this, you're going to get all the anti-immigrants to say, let's take away the U visas. And that would be a huge loss. And, we're all in this together. Like, we can't do that to each other.
So, Pert, there are a lot of people here that are listening to this episode, and they may be thinking, gosh, I saw this crime 2 years ago. Is it too late for them to report it now?
The reporting part, I don't know, because obviously the cops are going to, that's why I said report it. Sometimes I tell people just at least do the reporting part, so at least it's there, right? Now, I don't know what the rules are about reporting within the precincts and stuff, but if you had a crime happen a couple of years ago, a few years ago, and you have a police report, because as far as the U visa stands today, there is no limitation on when the crime happened. Obviously, the fresher the crime, the better it is for me. Okay. But that doesn't mean that if it happened to you in the past, that you cannot do something about it now. So at least you can make an attempt, right?
So, Pert, what are the things that you need to apply for this U visa?
So basically, the crime, the qualifying crime, right? And there's a list of that out there, which I'll put a link to. Number 2, you are going to need to have assisted a police authority or like a prosecutor's office or the head of the police department. So you need to assist. And the assistance could be something as simple as reporting, identifying the criminal, describing the criminal, going to court, being a part of the grand jury. All of that is, and again, you do not need to catch the criminal. Number 3, you need to have an injury, a physical injury or a mental injury. Not all crimes have physical injuries, but if you do, please go to the hospital, go to the doctor's office. But mental injury would be all that trauma that you suffer. And if you see the right therapist, they will say that you are most likely a victim of some kind of trauma that qualifies as mental injury. The 4th one, which your clients don't have anything to do with, but sometimes they don't know about it. Insist before your application leaves the office that you have a certification. Certification, you can have everything else. You could be the most perfect victim, but without a certification, your application means nothing. And you have no idea how many law offices just file this application without the certification because they know the clients don't know about it. The application sits around for 2 to 3 years because only 10,000 visas are granted a year. And in 3 years, you get this letter from immigration saying, well, your application's great, but you don't have a certification, and you panic, and either the lawyer has moved on or they're going to charge you more money, or worse, the cop or that prosecutor, they have moved on or retired or dead. Now you have to go chasing on something that should have been done 3 years ago. So as soon as you have a crime that's considered a qualifying crime, before your attorney makes you do anything else, your attorney should be working on getting you a certification, because once you have the certification, that is your green light to proceed on the U visa. Without a certification, your application means nothing.
So what's the first step? They come in and they
report the crime. Report the crime.
Okay. So the first thing you do is you report the crime then?
Yes. Report the crime and come to the lawyer's office with that report, and then let the lawyer evaluate what the report says. What did the police put in it? How much? Remember, the more details you give the police, that's how much details they're going to put in. If you have medical reports, bring those in.
Yes.
Absolutely. I hope it helps your audience.
Wonderful. Well, viewers, today we learned so much about U visas, immigration status, non-statuses for those of you who are watching at home. Please do not be fearful. If you think you can qualify for a U visa, please contact Pert Hora at PH Law Group today.